I'm the black sheep.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. This is John from All Points TV today, and today we're sitting in with Adam Gerics. I almost called you by one of your relatives. I did call you by your relative's name from the first take.
Yeah.
But anyway, because I know both of you, and it's kind of interesting family. I got to say that much. They're a very interesting family.
Yeah.
And I'm the outsider, so I'm not part of any of the,
internal family stuff.
internal struggles. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, Adam is was a write-in candidate for the Genesee County Prosecutor seat.
Yeah.
And did you hear about how you fared? Did you get any write-ins or?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't. I haven't checked with Gleason yet, and I know there's one requirement I have to finish for the November part of the election is when you do a write-in candidacy, you have to at least 2 weeks prior to the date of the vote, you have to file a campaign finance form or whatever. But I'm not, obviously I've spent like $20 on business cards, so it's not like it's a huge deal. But I'll follow up after that. I suspect I'll have a better result, even in just getting an answer as to whether or not I got anything from Gleason than I ever did from Inez Brown, because Inez Brown never actually got back with me. I'm not sure if she did with other candidates, but when I've run a write-in candidacy before for city council and whatnot in Flint, I know I got, just from the news, a number of write-in votes, but I never got contacted with an official figure, and I tried, a few times with Inez Brown to find out exactly how many I got, but, can't trust her. She's demonstrated that. 40 years working for the Democratic Party and almost the same amount of time as our election official. My experience has not been very good with her, so I know that in those previous elections I got write-ins, but again, only because the news pointed it out, not because I got any official recognition from the people in charge of counting the ballots and stuff. So we'll find out in November if I actually get anything. I haven't been really hard and heavy yet.
So though,
I'm about to be. So
I think it's interesting that you unveiled or told us during the first conversation we had about running for prosecutors that there's no real qualifications to have to be a lawyer to be the prosecutor.
Well, that's the first thing out of anybody's mouth. Well, are you a lawyer? No. Isn't that required? Don't you have to be? Well, wait a minute. It's a public office. They can't say you have to have this degree or that degree before you can take a public office. Then it wouldn't be democratic. It would be strictly, kind of the way they have it. Only lawyers running the lawyer's world or whatever. But bottom line is it's a public office, so yeah, there's no requirement there for that. And there have been a handful of people that have been prosecutor that were never attorneys at all in recent past. So
it could be a good move, maybe more people entering the field for maybe sheriffs and maybe for prosecutors who are not part, and I'd say this because I'm inflammatory, I guess, in bed with the local politics or the political scene.
Right.
It's undeniable that there's corruption in Genesee County.
Oh yeah.
It's very deep.
It's pandemic.
It's a pandemic.
It's been pandemic for a while.
And the thing is, it's an open secret. Everybody knows it, or they will.
Or even, I don't even know if, I guess some's open secret, some's just right in your face and nobody gives a crap. What really killed me about this last election, considering what I've been through with the 17 felonies of animal cruelty that I have been found not guilty of, 23-page opinion from Judge Freda on that subject, is that Paul Wallace, the head of animal control and Genesee County Animal Control, just getting that was like 64 million tax the people voted on. It was successful. They got
the
their
millage.
Yeah,
millage?
They got their millage. Yeah. First of all, it's absurd because this guy has run the place like a concentration camp for animals. Point in fact, I don't know if you heard, but 2-3 months ago they had an outbreak of parvo and lost a huge amount of the dogs. And
I didn't hear that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. This place is supposed to be where they're brought to be safe and then found forever homes or whatever, since they've become no kill supposedly. They solved that economic problem, didn't they? They didn't have to kill any of them. They just didn't treat them. And so they lost all these animals.
That's horrible.
Yeah, and this is what people are willing to give a millage to is this guy. I mean, it's ridiculous. On top of that, I guess, I don't know, I haven't followed up on it, but a couple months ago they were talking about how the animal control officials want to be able to carry handguns like cops.
Like
That's a disaster.
We don't have enough problems with that.
It's a disaster waiting to happen. You know, I mean, what are they going to do?
Well, see, animal control, though, I can understand why they want, because I've been attacked by dogs. I lost count. I mean, luckily I was able to repel them or and it happens a lot yet when you're walking through neighborhoods.
Sure.
Years ago, just down the road from where I'm currently living at, I was walking by this house with my dad's boxer dog, and all of a sudden this dog was going barking on the front porch of this house, so kind of a screened-in front porch. I didn't think nothing of it. I was like, it's safe, walking in, so at least it's behind the walls, right?
You'd think, right?
Crash!
Right.
It came right through a window, and it was right on me, man, almost.
Wow.
And I had to fight that thing. I mean, they talk about adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Well, what's the difference between that and, the situations that cops find themselves in anyway?
Right.
It's the same thing. The difference is that it's an animal, so nobody's going to give a shit if you shoot it, But what if the owner's there, or what if there's, in an animal control situation, generally speaking, they wouldn't be confronted with a situation like that. They'd be on the outside looking in, gathering intelligence to control the situation. Then they'll bring in their dart guns and, sticks with the loop on the end or whatever. What do they need a handgun for?
If that's...
What do they need it for? The main result is going to be civilian casualties and fatalities, probably more than any animal being shot.
I saw an incident that was reported on the internet, so I didn't know the veracity of it. I didn't care, but I was amusing at least as cop was taking care of a dog, like shooting it, and accidentally shot his partner, his other human partner.
Poor dog.
Yeah, I mean, the dog's like, okay, fine, you got your buddy, but didn't get me.
He didn't get the dog.
Didn't get the dog. No, he accidentally shot the dog.
Well, there you go. That's a good point right there.
What'd you see?
Right there,
There was a video out years ago, and this is a real live cam of some cops pulled somebody over, and they had them down on the ground, and he was getting restless on the ground. And the cop, went to pull, he said his taser. He pulled his gun and shot the guy, almost like he's right on top of him.
Right through the shoulder or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and it's like, oh my God, how would you possibly make that mistake? The taser might be like gun-like because it's got a handle and a grip, but...
No, I know the difference.
Oh my God. He shot this person with no real reason. I mean, I don't even know why he needed a taser at this point. The guy was on the ground.
Right.
And so,
Yeah, I gotta look that video up. I remember seeing that.
yeah, it was like, this is horrible. And I mean, okay, I know that...
That's what scares me about dealing with cops at all.
Because
that potential.
Well, see, I tell people, I hate when people tell me that I have to respect cops. Okay, respect's like an emotional issue or a choice you make.
Right.
Comply with the guys because they got guns,
Right.
and you don't know what they might be mad at their old lady. They might be, they might not be getting anything action from that 7-Eleven clerk because most of
Right.
7-Elevens are closed up now. But I mean, convenience store clerks, so
They're still
they might be
liquor
really
stores,
angry. Yeah.
Yeah.
They might be frustrated, and.
Yeah.
But and maybe that's where I'm going to get calls on that one. They're going to say I'm trivializing the stress they go under, but.
Well, I don't know.
Guess what? Dealing with okay, and here's another thing of meme on Facebook, and I think it's valid. Okay, a cop who's supposed to be trained, knows how to handle firearms, knows how to handle intense situations, can react and say they're in fear for their life. But a citizen, when they have guns pulled at them, are supposed to be like totally calm.
Docile.
When they got this guy waving a gun in their face
Right.
and screaming at you because he's going insane, probably roid rage,
Yeah.
or something, because a lot of those guys do juice like that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Well, there was one incident in Detroit that I highlighted on Facebook with some of the campaigning I was doing years ago against Child Protective Services. And it was a black woman in Detroit who fired her rifle through the door because she didn't know who was trying to kick her door in. It turned out to be Detroit cops and a CPS official. But she was exonerated because she was well within her rights. She didn't know.
right, you didn't know.
She didn't know who was beating down her door, trying to get in, and she verbally warned a few times before she sent some rounds through. She didn't hurt or kill anybody, but she sent some rounds through that front door,
Well, it's
and faced a little bit of legal trouble. But she won the day. Yeah, I can't remember her name. I have to look it up. But I did a video on her, a music video on her a while back. It's online still too. But
Yeah, because I mean, there's no knock warrant stuff. I mean, was it that one they did, that big case that they had?
Breonna
They
Taylor.
broke in that woman's house and shot her and they got the
Yeah.
wrong address.
yeah, Breonna. Oh, you talking about Brianna, or are you talking about the...
Yeah, Brianna. I'm talking about the Brianna case.
Because there was another one, I think, maybe it's the same one.
They can't be that. I mean,
where they went into the woman's apartment and just shot her. Or no, they went into the guy's apartment and
yeah,
just shot her.
the cop went. She thought she was going to her own apartment.
Right.
She walked in some other guy's apartment because it's an apartment complex. The houses, the fronts look alike. She saw this guy and she shot him.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, or did she shoot him or did she just told him?
No, she shot him. He's dead. He's dead.
I mean.
How paranoid can you be? I mean, first of all, to make that mistake, what's wrong with you?
I mean, couldn't you look around and see the surroundings? Like, gee, I didn't have the same color walls. I don't have the same furniture.
Right.
I don't have the same layout. I mean, the couch is in a different position. I mean, wouldn't there be a cue you think you could pick up on?
Yeah, I would think.
I mean, but yet a lot of cops are zealous if we defend ourselves in our houses and an invader comes into our house or one of them comes in. We're just supposed to roll over and die.
Yeah.
That's the reason why they don't want, in some areas, I think it's in Michigan too, you got to have permission from the sheriff to own body armor, to own, bulletproof vests and stuff.
Right.
Because I guess when they come through the door, when they shoot you, they want you dead.
Yeah.
And they don't want you to have a chance of going through it,
Right.
I mean, now, I know I'm going to get calls on that. I'm sorry, there's just too much abuse going on. We cannot allow this to go on any longer.
If you've seen it and experienced it, then you know. And like I said the last time, anybody that doesn't want to accept this, then just go back and watch NCIS, because that's not how it really is. But you can go ahead and believe that all you want.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, the attorney I have in relation to the 2013 arrest that I'm still in court for civil rights violations, I got him because in doing my research to find an attorney for this situation, I found a newspaper article about him representing another guy here in Flint who got brutalized by Flint cops on his front porch, like right inside the foyer of his house, and it was simply because for whatever reason the cops were out flashing lights and looking around his property or whatever, and he stepped out and said, "What do you want? What are you doing on my property?" And they told him to go back in his house. It was none of his business. He said, "No, this is my property," whatever. Kind of argued with him a little bit. And then they kicked his ass, pepper sprayed him, and then told him afterwards that he was now their project. They were going to make him one of their projects. What the hell does that mean? Anyway, he's suing. I think it's back in appeals, and it's been taking almost as long as my case. But the fact of the matter is that's what they did. They walked into his house and beat the crap out of him and pepper sprayed him, and it's not new. Nothing new about that situation. It's common.
I'd like to sit down to a cop who is actually still on patrol, because a lot of the cops I know are retired, been out of the game for a few years. I'd like to say, you don't realize, I'm holding up my iPhone, okay? They can't cameras on most phones people carry around.
Everywhere.
You realize it, don't you? I mean, not these cops, because, realize you used to be able to get away with all kinds of crap. You're getting away with a lot less because people are recording in it.
Yeah.
And don't tell me that we can't cross-examine a video recording, because guess what? That's ridiculous. It's just, obviously you can't cross-examine the video, but you can't be so dismissive of a person's charge or allegation of brutality or mishandling, whatever. You can't easily dismiss it.
The most recent one I just saw was a cop in Texas or something harassed a guy who was filming an arrest, got literally right in his face, told him something about we don't like this, you shouldn't be involved, you're intruding upon an arrest and all this crap. But the guy was like 30 feet away, and the state trooper's like right in his face with no mask on. Supposedly COVID's supposed to be such a big deal, but just no mask on, 2 inches from the guy's face, and harassing him about filming an arrest. It's like some people say even security cameras don't really matter to a lot of people because they're still going to act stupid anyway. The guy's like a state trooper. He should be wearing a mask, and he should know that if the guy's really not impeding an arrest, being 30, 40 feet away filming it, to leave him the hell alone.
Right.
Why do you feel like you need to walk up to this guy and object to him doing what he can freely do? It doesn't make any sense to me that would even be a thought. I'm gonna go over and screw with this guy. He's filming us, and we don't like it. Well, too bad, dude. Again, the old adage is, you work for us. Follow the damn rules. Do what you're supposed to do. Enforce the law.
When they say they got cameras all over the place, and they say their adage they always come back with is, if you're not doing anything wrong, what do you have to fear? Why isn't that applied to cops? Why don't cops accept that it goes two ways? I mean, if you're not doing anything wrong, police officer, why don't you want to wear your body cam?
Well, also, I think why is it this mentality that everything you do could potentially be criminal, so why should I have to worry and feel like that?
Right.
That I'm doing something wrong.
See,
Unless I'm actually doing something majorly wrong, most of the time, most people aren't doing anything wrong. So, why are you questioning me like that? Why are you imposing this, like, guilt factor on me when I'm not even really doing anything? You know what I mean?
I don't know if you've seen the video I posted. It's a shortened version of Don't Talk to the Police on YouTube. It's like a two-parter.
No,
they have a lawyer basically presenting first, and then they have a follow-up as a detective. And his is much briefer, and I mean, it's not the length that the lawyer ran, but he actually basically has to sum it up as whatever this lawyer told you, do it, because he says don't talk to the cops. And this detective actually says the cops, and him Scoof included, will, if they saw somebody and they just want to, they follow them long enough, they're going to make some kind of thing they can actually use for excuse to pull them over.
Sure.
So, I mean, if you got people just using that approach, why would they engage in that approach? I mean, if you see somebody
to harass.
Yeah, it's just because they want to make their bones. They want to make their ticket quota, whatever it is.
Right.
And is that effective law enforcement to create the crime?
Right.
Go out of your way to even cause the crime.
That's what happened to me. 17 felonies of animal cruelty that I beat.
All right.
Not guilty. They were there because they thought that I had an illegal pot grow, even though I'm a medical marijuana card holder.
Well, see, the thing is,
I've known you for a while. When that didn't work, then they decided, we'll just charge him with these dogs. Like, the worst that they should have done was no licenses.
Right.
For a number of them. Because four of them had licenses.
In my opinion, that doesn't constitute animal cruelty. It basically, the dog doesn't say, man, I feel so unwanted because I don't have a tag on my collar.
I'm saying the worst they should have lawfully been able to charge me was for not having licenses.
And they've been doing that a stretch. To go that extent, they come across that and basically throw that at you as something they could
they were
come up
looking
with.
for anything. I know I haven't told the story in full yet, but I mean, I show up at my house and they're all in SWAT gear. The police chief of Montrose lied, perjured himself in court, and said he wasn't at my property when this happened, and he was right in my face, telling me he didn't give a crap about my constitutional rights, and I wasn't going to run him off like I ran this previous officer off with my constitutional rights, and all this crap. And when they figured out the weed wasn't going to work, then they attacked the dogs. But once again, it was all manufactured just to harass me.
Right. Not
guilty. None of my dogs, by their own vet's testimony, who apparently couldn't run the animal control well enough to prevent parvo. By her own testimony, they were not dehydrated. They were not lacking of food or malnourished or anything. There was nothing. No matted poo in the fur. None of that, like you see in the commercials for help the animals. Organizations. No, by her own testimony. So this was purely all manufactured. And I forget who I saw. I forget what show I was watching. Some old 80s, 70s show, but he said, oh no, it was I guess 90s. What was it? Babylon 5 was in the 90s.
What was it?
Babylon 5.
90s, yeah, mid-90s, late 90s.
Malare, yeah. Emperor, well, he eventually became Emperor Malare. The guy with the big hair.
See, I saw that a couple times.
He said to his assistant, Veer, he's like, well, I need you because it takes two people to conspire.
It was honest.
At least two people to conspire. So.
But see, the thing is, Adam, you have a thick skin. You've spent your life in activism. I mean, I've known you. I met you during the Occupy Wall Street stuff, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, 8 years ago or something.
Yeah, so
quite a few years ago. Jesus Christ.
It's a long time.
Yeah, time flies, man. Sure.
But so you have a thicker skin. You were out in San Francisco taking part of the ACT UP movement out there.
Yeah. I did some Earth First stuff too.
Yeah.
We went and spiked trees and shit like that. But
see, so you're kind of the rebel. I mean, you just basically got that kind of a.
I guess so.
Yeah. See, but a lot of people are easily intimidated because we're buttoned down people. A lot of us are just basically want to go about our lives unhindered
and watch it on TV.
Yeah, well,
see,
I don't even
vicariously live it.
Well, yeah, because that those are actors and they're not going to actually have they're not serving time, but it's hard for people to actually people are easily socialized and over socialized in my opinion. They fear government, they fear the men in blue, and I don't know if I want to totally eradicate because I hope something can keep people in check. But when it's the police themselves, they can't be kept in check.
Mm-hmm.
going to their boss, who's their buddy, their drinking buddy, they probably share winching stories with and stuff. I mean, that's not the good approach. I mean, that's what I advocate for, is not having having a process to file a complaint against a cop that doesn't involve having other cops investigate it.
Yeah.
I think that's an absurdity.
We used to have an ombudsman for stuff like that, but,
but
they've eliminated offices
Well,
like
well,
that.
we have the ombudsman now, but I mean,
Oh, they do?
yeah, they do. They got it back now, but I mean, I forget her name. She's
Like it
black
matters.
female. I forget her name now, though.
Like it matters.
But what I've heard, and I don't know if it's verifiable, but I heard she was a police officer who was charged with something too. That's what I heard. And I don't know if that's what I heard. So I haven't mentioned the name, so I guess it's gossip, but it's real random gossip. But
just
that's what I
goes on
heard.
and
Somebody
on.
told me that the person told me that lives in another county, but he's he used to live here, and he's like very much of a watcher of what the ongoing events here in Genesee County. And matter of fact, he's done investigations for lawyers, for clients who are charged with stuff by the various police departments in Genesee County. And his work usually helps bring about the result of getting the people's charges largely dismissed, a slap on the wrist, because they're so overdrawn anyway. The charges were so overwrought. There's no sustainability. They're just basically
Well, that's
airbags.
They probably do that in part to ensure that it doesn't really go anywhere.
Right.
We'll blow it up into the media in proportion, and then when they can't actually prove the case, it just goes away and people forget about it. Plus, people have a short memory. Things can happen. The most horrendous things can happen, and a month later, 2 days later, a year later, people just forget about it. They don't even have any recollection of history, recent, let alone older history. So I don't know. It's not like any of this stuff is new.
No, it's not.
It's,
Not in this
it's
county.
glorified on TV all the time. People. I guess maybe I sound like one of the old punk rockers. Blow up your TV. Don't listen to the bullshit news. Do the research yourself. Question everything. Question authority. Don't trust anybody's word. Because no matter what. Whether it's recent with Breonna or George Floyd or whatever, or as far back as Mott and the Black Legion, it exists, and there's not this Justice League that's ever sprung up in the greater mind of the people to try to prevent that or curtail that. We just kind of take it. Like, what was the guy's name from the IRS that was like poisoning people and breaking up the speakeasies and stuff? They did the movie about him.
The Untouchables?
No, he was from the IRS. They gave him all that authority.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, you'd know him if I could remember the name. They'd show up at bootleggers' places and wreck the alcohol barrels and all that stuff. And it was speculated that during that time, people were dying because of bad bathtub gin or whatever.
Oh yeah, the government did create bad booze.
But there was that was an intentional thing.
Put it out the market, yeah. Well, they did that with Paraquat back on marijuana back in the 70s.
What was his name? Anyway, go ahead.
Well, do you remember that? You're a marijuana activist.
Yeah.
The Paraquat they sprayed on the
Right.
tree, the plants growing outside in California, I think it was, and it's an herbicide.
Yeah.
And some people unethically knew it was tainted. They cut it down and processed it to weed, and they smoked it, and they had that herbicide. They were smoking in that herbicide.
Yeah.
It made them sick. So I don't know if people died or not, but that was government-inspired, government-created.
Man, it's gonna
health
kill me. I don't
crisis.
remember this guy's name because he wasn't FBI. He was an IRS agent.
Was that Elliot Ness?
Yes,
Okay.
Elliot Ness.
Yeah, he was that movie, and that was Untouchables was a movie about
Oh,
him.
it was?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought
David
that was, again,
wrote the
different gangster
screenplay for
movie.
that. But they had a TV series back before I was born called The Untouchables about Elliot Ness, and it was Robert Stack played Elliot Ness.
I'm thinking the Expendables.
Yeah, Sylvester Stallone,
Yeah, I
and
know.
the guy from the Flint, wasn't it? Terry
Yeah.
Crews or something?
Yeah, Terry
I think he was
Crews.
in it too.
Yeah.
Well, one of the
But yeah, Elliot Ness.
Yeah, Elliot Ness. Well,
that was awful. He was given just carte blanche to do whatever, to whomever, whenever.
or Harry Anslinger, with marijuana.
Right. Right.
It's like.
And Hoover.
Well, Hoover. So I had a friend who worked for the FBI, and she always talked about how the quirkiness she heard about, J. Edgar Hoover.
Quirkiness, that's
And
putting it lightly.
what'd you say?
Quirkiness, that's putting it lightly.
I'll put it. Well, nowadays it's nothing.
Wasn't he
what he
tranny
did.
or cross-dresser?
Yeah, cross-dresser. I mean, nowadays that would be considered very harmless.
Right.
But she was always telling me about
Yes.
the honor and the prestige the FBI had, and they should have. People should see them with. And I went. The person who was he was the second director of the FBI, not the first one,
Right.
but he had it for like 60 years. I don't remember how many presidents, administrations he worked with.
Right.
A person like J. Edgar Hoover was
Yeah.
he spied on people, he spied on his own people, he spied on everybody else. She says, well, we're only allowed to operate under the constitutional constraints.
Yeah,
but
right.
I would like to say to her, I said, show me in the Constitution the provision for creation of such an agency as the FBI.
Right.
And she goes, well, you don't know what it's like to take a bureaucratic oath. I went, it's words uttered in air. That's all it is.
Yeah. Well,
Because we know they violate. And now look, I mean, the Steele dossier, the other crap they've been doing they doing random wiretaps since 9/11 being the reason why they often cite they got to do this war on terror.
Right.
So they got to gather this intelligence.
Patriot Act authorizes wire.
Oh, yeah.
Warrantless wired.
And then what was his name? Carl Levin. He was supposed to be years ago. He started out as being the darling of the ACLU, and he wrote the Defense Act or whatever, which basically allowed people to be detained indefinitely and without any charges being filed, suspension of writ of habeas corpus.
Yeah.
And this man was like the darling of the ACLU when he started his political career. I think he had worked with them, and now he has become a tyrant himself.
Well, I mean, we've already agreed these progressive liberal types are actually pretty tyrannical, no matter how much they want to portray themselves to be, for the people. They know better. They know better than us. And those that didn't know better than us suddenly do know better than us once they get elected into office in that environment. I mean, you can go all the way back to what was it? I forget the woman's name with Planned Parenthood. White woman, founded Planned Parenthood, a supposed progressive liberal or whatever. But the main goal was to diminish the black population as much as possible. NAACP was formed by white people. There wasn't even a black person on the original board of the NAACP for a decade or two or something. So it's all these progressive types that seem to think they know everything, and we don't. And like I said, they could have been one of us until they got elected there, and then suddenly they know everything that we don't know, and they know better than us, So
Well, that's
this ACLU guy becoming a tyrant does not surprise me one bit.
No.
Not one bit.
I had to look it up what it meant for NDA, so I'm going to pull that up again. It's a National Defense Authorization Act. And, of course, Levin's no longer in power. Carl Levin isn't. But
Right.
he was the author of it, basically, the one behind it. Another thing is, too, I've seen, it's interesting, and I really enjoy this, actually, is seeing the black voters actually saying, guess what, to the Democratic Party? We're not always going to be in lockstep with you. You're not going to always be our party.
I'd like to see that more and more.
Yeah, because
not that I'm for the Republicans necessarily, but they've been snowed for too long by the Democrats to.
The thing is, if the civil rights movement actually had this desired effect, people will become so much more. It wasn't such a big issue about going out in society and making your way.
Right.
You didn't have these impositions, these laws, and it prohibited it. You're going to have people develop themselves more individually. They're going to see that their interests are going to be better addressed by not always being in lockstep with this organization that long since has become very almost paternalistic and very restrictive.
Right.
And so, I mean, not that they're abandoning the idea. I don't think they're abandoning the ideas of, equality or a potential for development or opportunity or anything else. Matter of fact, I think they're saying, I did it. I'm sure I'll help you do it, but you don't have to always belong to this party. They're basically, their viewpoint of you is very scathing. They don't think you can stand on your own.
Right. Well, none of us can.
What do you say?
None of us can, as far as the Democrats are concerned.
Yeah, I think it's
that's what kills me about this superiority complex that some of these white people have with this, the rebel flag and redneck. And I'm highly critical of this Bertucky crap that they got for a festival. And maybe that's a silver lining in COVID-19 is some of the crap doesn't get to go on. But the idea of a redneck is just a smidge higher than a slave. I mean, yeah, they got a lot more privileges, of course, but at the same time, to the slave master, you were not much higher than a slave. They'd find another guy.
Well,
and it just goes to show how many people are willing to go out and be brutal for somebody else to get paid for it. But the bottom line is, you cracker, you redneck, you are not valued as much as you seem to think you are, because you're white. You were as much a slave in some sense as the slaves themselves. So,
Jim Goad, in his book, The Redneck Manifesto, I don't know if you ever heard of him, Jim Goad.
I've heard of the book, not his name.
I think he's got a podcast somewhere, too. I saw the list of people who did podcasts and on this one platform, and I forgot which one it was, but I'm going to have to check him out because the Redneck Manifesto, he makes a good case about the people that are called the rednecks are people who embrace that title because it's either one is that or it's that or the poor white trash. and the poor white trash historically aren't much different than the blacks and the former slaves in this country.
Right.
A lot of them were indentured servants. A lot of them were
Irish.
What?
Look at the Irish.
Right. A lot of them were Irish.
Yeah, well, yeah. But
A lot of them were
look at
Irish.
the Irish, right?
It's a really interesting book because he talks about this woman in the Highlands of Scotland. Her name, she was like a Sutherland. Her last name was Sutherland, and she was like so distraught by the ordeal of the black slaves in America before the Revolution. She donated money for that cause to eliminate it. But here's the irony of it: her family was responsible for clearing the highlands of the traditional people who live there and shipping them all over the world so they can have it for hunting estates, their property.
Right.
So I mean, it's that. But he makes that point. And see, I have a Scottish side of my family. My last name is Wilson, so it's Scottish.
Right.
My family came over here in the 1850s from Glasgow, Scotland, or Edinburgh, Scotland. And they were around Glasgow. They got married there, but they came from Edinburgh when they left over here. Came over here, the Scottish side. I have German, Polish connection, and then also there's like 8 different nationalities in there in my family. So, but I mean, the poor person who actually embraces the redneck because they know that they're scorned. They want to be scorned. They want to reject and be rejected. That's what he makes a case about. Basically, they embrace that title.
So it's like an oppositional disorder.
Yeah, basically it's like, the black power thing. Well, this is a form of white power.
Right.
And the thing is,
That's funny that you mentioned that too, because I think I saw something like a year or two ago on Facebook where there was folk that were actually embracing the redneck idea, but in kind of the reverse of what you're saying, and reaching out to black people as like we're the same.
That's what he does.
It.
That's what he advocates.
Okay.
That's what he says that happens too. Because he makes a case. He said, "I've seen more blacks in redneck bars than I have in the upper, the yuppie bars."
I got you now.
Because they always want to make this. The rednecks are going to kill off the black people. I know a lot of people who are considered rednecks. They're from the South. They were very poor. They came up here, hit hard times. The factories closed up. The second generation didn't enjoy the prosperity. The first ones came up and got the jobs in the factory. So they were making, ends meet with hit or miss jobs and stuff. So they were they know they were labeled as rednecks, but they weren't violent people. Right. They were people that maybe have the class. I mean, some people think they're so necessary, but they weren't violent people. Right. I mean, when somebody started a fight with them, they'd fight, but they're pretty much congenial to everybody unless she's pissed on them, right. So I mean, a lot of people I know that the people in the burbs would call them rednecks, and they probably were rednecks. But let's face it, I know a lot of poor blacks that could be violent if they're pushed to the wall, but they weren't they're always in your face either.
Right.
I mean, but what it is I don't see so much a thing of race in this country. It is the perception of superiority when somebody gains just a little bit more than their neighbor and moves out of that area.
It's funny. I was just thinking that the other day, how with the Black Lives Matter movement and everything going in that direction, and how they're feeling this new resurgence of identity and power or whatever. Maybe that may be what has contributed in some cases to violence against white people because of what's been going on, because they're feeling that little bump up, so to speak. But both communities make the same failure. And I know it might be hard to swallow because there's a lot of white corporate people out there, but nowadays there's also a lot of black corporate people out there. I mean, look at Kanye and his wife. I mean, they just got like businesses galore, But the bottom line is, people are pretty much the same, and they keep us competing for this like little extra leg up. And like you said, once they get it, then there's a superiority complex that kind of comes with it, and it's just an old divide and conquer tactic that's always been used, Over time, you would think that both communities making the same mistake, which is to not invest in their communities, would be the things that they would actually focus on rather than getting a little bit of recognition for the plight, I guess, Because, I mean, look around Flint. Wasn't, like, a lot of Flint, like, mostly white until the Fair Housing Act, and then, everything kind of got equalized, supposedly, but then at the same time, black or white, there's been, like, complete disinvestment in their own neighborhoods. I remember Flint being much more vibrant, and I know it's not entirely due to GM leaving, because it's still a choice as to whether or not you can keep your property up or be concerned about the community or, whatever it is, So there's a complete lack of interest in the fundamentals of what it takes to keep your community together, and like an intense focus on attention on plight, but no work to improve, past that point. That's why this whole defund the police movement is I think it's destined to failure, simply because not enough people are interested in changing how the police operate and how the justice system operates. The biggest issue I have with that is that cops will generally be believed better automatically by judges than the individual that might be in opposition to them, which is why I love the fact that I've been found not guilty. I knew I wasn't guilty, but I love the fact that I was found not guilty, because for as much as I might have felt that occurring, at the same time, I think I had a fair and honest judge who probably weighed all the testimony and credibility of how people spoke and what they presented, and on the surface appearances, we have this fine officer of 26 years, but he's not guilty, dude. So he got that, like, visible support being a cop, and I'm a judge, and I'm going to be more supportive of the cop. But in the end, it wasn't believable enough, obviously. I don't know.
See, I don't.
People make the same mistake on both sides, and then they don't want to see, that they're not really doing anything. They're fighting for an idea, and not doing anything substantial to make it happen. Like, AIDS activists, didn't just go, oh my God, this is not just a gay disease, and we're gonna protest the suppression of that and the identity of the people that are trying to fight to make sure that this is not just primarily a gay disease. They did a lot more than just social issues. Well, for example, the drug approval process for drugs, like for cancer and HIV and stuff like that, has been sped up due to the AIDS activists of the late 80s, early 90s. There was a period there where, and still, drugs may never ever hit the human market for like 10 or 20 years, because they have to run through all these tests and all these double blinds and placebo and everything, which is great. And of course they should, to test efficacy and whether or not it's toxic or going to harm you. But at the same time, if you have people that are dying, and they're willing to take anything, even if it's just in a testing phase, to see if it's effective, we forced the drug companies, and Anthony Fauci was directly involved with a lot of this. He bucked it, but at the same time accepted it and pushed it through. But AIDS activists were the ones that were able to make fundamental change in the pharmaceutical side of things in order to get people with HIV and AIDS into tests faster than they would have ever seen. So that's like foundational stuff. Whereas Black Lives Matter and this redneck movement, what else is there other than the identity of the issue? You're not investing in the community. You're not making sure the cops act appropriately to your neighbor or whomever.
And I think the facts too that a lot of defunding, the police thing might end up like boomeranging on those who advocate it, because I think for the communities they think are representing, they're more vulnerable, to criminal activity, and defunding the police. I mean, I'd like to have people define what they mean when they say defund it, because if you want to stop the militarization of it, okay, I can understand that. But totally take away the operating budget, that's stupid. I mean, we got to have reform, but I can't say doing away without cops totally. I just can't see that.
Well, that's why I say it's destined to fail. I think I read an article. Even though LA has like thrown up their hands and said, okay, we're going to take so many millions of dollars and put it back into the black community, even at that rate, it would take 20 years to totally defund the police, like they're suggesting they want. So there's got to be something else. I mean, it's either, if you're going to do it entirely, or don't do it at all. I mean, because it doesn't make sense to just incrementally take away their money, but not leave any leeway for education or sensitivity or any other type of training that would make them better professionals at what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? Because at the very minimum, if in fact what they are is nothing but first responders, because they don't prevent crime. Maybe their presence does on a street corner, but otherwise they don't prevent crime. We would still need them for possible intense situations.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I don't, even in most neighborhood settings, unless, it's like you got some psycho or somebody that's going to kill his wife in a bad domestic violence situation, even then, they're not preventing anything. They're just showing up to clean up the mess. There's no community counseling of any kind that goes on. Nobody gives a crap about stuff like that, They're just there to make sure that the really bad stuff gets attention, so, they can justify their existence. I mean...
you make a valid point, because we got to address something so that you don't have to repeat down the road of these same people. Say, okay, you have this issue. But the thing is, I don't even know if counseling helps. I really don't. I mean, I think it's like, I'm getting very skeptical, very pessimistic.
Oh, I agree. I'm just saying, there's got to be something else.
There's got to be.
At least a discussion of it. You know what I mean? Something.
But I'm definitely against defunding the cops, because I just basically think those people who are now advocating it now for that, to defund, are going to be the first ones screaming bloody murder when they can't get a cop to show up for something. Okay, it's like everybody said, I mean, myself included. I mean, I'll aim at myself on this. I don't like how cops can act belligerently and stuff. The things like I keep on hitting and nailing, and that's all I would want. Body cam use, allow them to get them to use them, have better training, which they should enjoy. As a matter of fact, I talked to cops. They said they like when they get a chance to get more training, because it does give them a fresh perspective. It also allows them to get a chance to get away from these streets or something, and that's a good break. It's like a mini vacation. It's still work related.
Sure.
But another thing is too, just simply have a way, making sure there's a consistent form of it, of the criteria, and leave it to the areas to how to best meet that, but where the cop is not the overseer, and if a case is going to go to be followed through. Talking to the police chief, I think it's stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, the police chiefs, these are his buds.
Right.
I mean, okay, if you and I are charged with a crime, we have to get a defense attorney, and hopefully they can find corroborating evidence and witnesses to help back our case. They don't allow our family to be the spokesman for ourselves totally and say, we accept your findings, and we're going to be dismissing these charges based on... No, so why are the cops? Because essentially that's their family.
Right, let me call my cousin.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't... Okay, but ours is an adversarial system.
Right.
They got the prosecution and defense, and that's supposed to be a good way of doing it, and I can't really disagree, because I haven't seen any other ways around the world that I would find better, but... just simply letting the accused parents and friends or family members say, oh, no, they didn't do it. Okay, case closed. No, that doesn't work. Why is that allowable in the cops? Because cops, the prosecutors, whatever, are in bed together.
Yeah.
They are family.
Absolutely.
They are there we're one united purpose.
Right.
To get your money, to do something to you, to send people to prison, and we are facing that apparatus, which takes a portion of our funds that we pay to the municipality.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
And so we're basically...
We're paying for this.
We're sharpening the blade held to our throat.
Right.
So guess what? I want to even the odds a bit and saying, if this cop's done this, I'll guarantee you, if he's that bad, he's probably done it before.
Right.
And the thing is, there's this idea of there's good cops. There might be cops who don't engage in that activity.
Right.
But they know the other cops that do it and do nothing to stop it.
Right.
Because guess what? It's us against them. And there's a very valid point.
Right, and that brings to mind the position of the sheriff, because there was at one time that position was respected as the authority of an area or a region. Yeah, you might have your township police or city police, but for the county, the sheriff was like the final authority. Well, sheriffs don't act, well, most of them don't. Some do. You've seen some out there that have, said that they won't enforce bogus 2A violation or laws or whatever, or the one in I think it was Florida who said he's not going to enforce the mask issue with his officers. But the bottom line is the idea of the sheriff was supposed to be like they're the final law of the land. So if the police do something wrong, that's who you should really go to, is the sheriff. And then the sheriff should have no bones about possibly investigating this. But like you said, they're all in bed together, so you don't really have that separation of power like you're supposed to have. You know what I'm saying? Who else would you want to arrest a Flint cop or a Flint city councilman? Not a Flint cop. You'd want a sheriff. I mean, logically, the way it's supposed to work, you would think you would want the sheriff to be in there doing it, not a Flint cop. Because, like, even with Eric Mays, for as boisterous and as loud and as dumb as he's gotten in that auditorium, I still think it's incredibly funny that it's a Flint cop arresting him. It should be a sheriff. If he even needs to be arrested for anything, because I don't think what he's been arrested for so far is valid, other than him being found on the wrong side of the freeway with 4 flat tires. That could have been a Flint cop, fine, I get that. But in council chambers, what? Because then all it looks like is the Doberman pinchers, the dogs for the system that are on top are just sicking them on one of their own that they don't agree with. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that's just one example, but the bottom line is the sheriff is supposed to be the top authority of the whole area. Regardless of what cops for what townships or cities are within that area. The sheriff is supposed to be the top authority of that area.
And that's why I've advocated when there are people who are not from law enforcement background running for office. I have a tendency, my ears perk up when I hear that. Mm-hmm. Because I've seen too much of this, like, oh yeah, I knew so-and-so, I was on patrol with them for 5 years, that's kind of a red flag for me. It's like, you guys are cronies, you're going to get away with all kinds of stuff, and are you really going to be looking out for the interests of the people of the county? Because basically you're like buddy up with all their law enforcement, and sometimes you're going to have to oppose these people. You should. You're going to be in that position possibly. And I think even including, correct me if I'm wrong, but...
should be expected.
But federal government, when they were doing an investigation in the county, they got to inform the sheriff that they have a presence there, don't they?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And local law enforcement.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, mostly the sheriff for the most part.
I was just thinking that when you were talking about the sheriff, I like non-conventional candidates, I guess. And years ago, a person who was a sheriff who wasn't from law enforcement was not the traditional. That was the way it went. Most of the times, basically it is law enforcement, but they weren't from law enforcement.
Right. It's not Mayberry.
But it is elected a position, and I guess that's good because that's a way of removing somebody who might be a bad, for the lack of a better term, bad cop.
Right.
If you get wind of it. But then again, how much times Pical's got away with stuff that we don't even know what he's done or he had done.
Well, like again, back with Jeff Wright and his whole pipeline from the lake to here. It's a sheriff who should have been directed by a prosecutor or maybe on their own to go and investigate. Well, you work for city council and you're on this board. That's a violation of state law. I don't want some Flint cop getting involved with that. I would rather have the sheriff, be the ones looking into things like that. And as far as Pical goes, I don't know if you know this, but supposedly he was a CIA interrogator.
Right.
Long before, like in
polygraph operator, wasn't it?
Was it polygraph?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Back in the 70s. So that he was certainly not unaware of the possibility that you'd have corrupt officials. I'd love to see and find out who he actually interrogated for the CIA. Was it just foreign elements? Was it like elements internally? Because CIA is not supposed to operate here, but they do.
Not supposed to.
Right, with their little black ops and secret prisons and shit. So I'd love to know who he had on the polygraph machine. But he was sheriff, so he was, as far as that corruption and that kind of crap goes, he was not ignorant to it at all. Probably had, like you said, experiences we'd never know what he did or was involved in, with other cops or sheriffs or whatever.
I often think that I want accountability and I want disclosure, I want transparency.
Yeah.
But when I see the amount of stuff that I've seen come out of Genesee County, maybe it's a good thing for my sanity that I don't have full knowledge. Because my anger would be like way up if I actually knew all the things and instances.
Right.
And I'm sorry to say that, but I think there's much more that it doesn't come to the surface.
Right. No, I've had professors, lawyers, very well-educated, intelligent people tell me that Genesee County is like it's considered a cesspool. It's like one of the possibly worst in the country in terms of nepotism and corruption and, glad handing and helping each other out and through a bad illegal situation. It's like one of the top worst, total cesspool of corruption. And these are very well-educated people.
I heard that too. I talked to a person who was he did investigative work for lawyers, and he did on the counties, and he said, I'm so surprised that everything goes along at all in Genesee County, the amount of corruption and payola, and this was like 30 years ago. I was being told this,
Right.
and it's another thing is too, like we had bench warrants, or whenever like the people they had warrants out for people, not just bench warrants. They had warrants out for people. Two different cops at two different places, two different times, so I don't know if they had communicated with each other, but they told me at this one time, this was the 90s, there was 45,000 warrants out for people in Genesee County. 45,000 warrants.
Even back then, there would have been about a third, right?
Yeah. That's startling. That's astonishing. It's like mind-blowing.
Yeah. Well, probably a good number of them were child support. That's a total racket, I'm not against... Don't get me wrong, there are deadbeat dads, but the system doesn't work. It's a complete farce.
Well, the Freda court, we used to do, when we first started doing the shows up here, when we were upstairs, we didn't have the studio here in the basement, we're Studio 1714, people from the Equal Parenting Organization got hold. This is about fathers, typically, it was mostly fathers who were being basically pushed out of their kids' lives. The only time they got a chance to see their kid is if they made a payment.
Right.
And whereas, the resources are always allocated for the female, and she always had access to the kids regardless if she had ability to pay or not, but it was all basically a pay-for-view kind of scenario set up for the males.
Absolutely.
So anyway, they came in, they did a lot, and I was surprised, they had a woman in there, she wrote a book, and I can't remember her name, but the name of the book is, she worked for the Friend of the Court, and she goes, Friend of the Court, Enemy of the Family.
Right, Friend of the Court.
It's a good book, I guess, for that, because she worked like so many years with the Friend of the Court system. Now, I've asked this, and I don't know if anybody gave a definitive answer, but is the Freda court system nationwide or just Michigan thing?
No, I think that's, if it's not called Friend of the Court or something similar.
Different areas.
Like in New York, what is it, Department of Children's Services or whatever, that's the equivalent of CPS in New York. DC,
so it's kind of interwoven?
Yeah, they have it. It may not be called Friend of the Court, DMV is actually part of the Secretary of State here, but it's a different office in different states.
The Secretary of State makes me thinking there's some person's like a dignitary who goes to other states to make treaties or whatever.
Right.
That's a Secretary of State on the national level. The federal government does. They're connected to foreign policy, foreign relations. So it's just kind of an odd choice of title.
It is an odd choice.
It's an odd choice. The Department of Motor Vehicles is basically more prosaic. It's very to the point.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Come here to get your license plates.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe we should petition to get that changed. We just basically Department of Motor Vehicles. I think that's more like.
Well, no, because they also do the LARA stuff and they do the hunting licenses and
well, then we'll just call them the Department of Licensing.
That'd probably be more succinct. Yeah.
It's more succinct. The Secretary of State just sounds so impressive.
Yeah, it sounds so international.
Basically, meters of waiting in line, surly people, and people who just don't want to be there because they don't want to drive. They don't want to pay. And this is a wonderful thing they do: make it on your birthday.
Right.
They have to pay this for. Yeah, it's a nice happy birthday. Now give us $150. Yeah. I just think. And the thing is, a lot of this stuff, I can understand for identification. Somebody loses their vehicle, you want their registered, because so you can actually trace it, if the cops can have the resources to even try to do that.
Right.
But it's just a revenue source.
Yeah.
And they create these big all these offices are set up so they can have a revenue source. Well, it doesn't seem like a smart move because all the infrastructure and all the overhead to create so they can have cash flow.
Well,
to some degree.
I guess they would consider that the smart move to make it an institution. It's funny too because so much of that stuff is just that, an institution set up to maintain a revenue stream more than anything else.
Right.
I'd like to see what was it in the 30s? was it Roosevelt who did the dams and the New Deal?
The New Deal and
I'd like
the
to see something like that.
yeah,
Something
Works
like that
Progress
with these-
Administration.
Yeah, I'd like to see something like that with these reformed ideas, like a new deal on cops, a new deal on how tons of things operate. But again, we're still talking about like this intrinsic corruption that needs to be attacked on a massive scale, and people need to stop getting distracted with these smaller issues, no matter how big they may seem. By, like I said, a couple weeks ago, yes, fatalities are awful from the police, but they have such an effect on everything else in a person's life that doesn't have to be fatal, but still it has a tremendous impact. Even right down to a parking ticket that you might not be able to pay, and then you end up getting a bench warrant for it, and out of the blue you're arrested and you can't go to work. So now, because of you were parked wrong, you spend 30 days in jail or whatever because you get a bad judge. Or just the overall effect of the system is not really meant to be protecting and serving. It's to be punishing and fining, and that's it. I mean, we need to go somewhere with this. Again, like the corruption's so intrinsic that we need a new deal on everything. The thing that I didn't even realize when I was campaigning against CPS some years ago, that I think it was the Michigan Child Protective Services was found to have, and it just disappeared. So I need to find the articles and bring it more to light. But I think it was Michigan CPS officials were found to have been taking children and selling them. Like this human trafficking thing.
Wow.
And it was like 2009 or something like that. But you're talking about police fatalities and their misdeeds and abuse of power and all that. Well, I mean, there's a lot of other departments that do the same thing, whether it's a building and safety inspector or a CPS worker or a cop or whatever. It's funny because my dealings with CPS were because of my ex's mother. It's so funny, just like the 17 felonies I just beat. CPS tried to bring some issues against us, and we were found to be not negligent and nothing they were trying to charge us with. But they're supposed to be open to whomever they're dealing with. Like if you go into a Muslim's house or devout Christian's house or a Buddhist house, they're not supposed to be discussing any of those issues. But I'm a Halloween baby, so a lot of the stuff I have is skulls and snakes and mummies, and I have this kind of macabre flavor in my life. I think it's largely due to the fact that, one, I'm Hungarian, two, I was born on Halloween, so that's been my general decor, and you can imagine what kind of birthday presents I've gotten, if I've gotten them at all, over the years, is always a skull or something like that. At any rate, the CPS worker, one of her first judgments on us had nothing to do with the possible neglect of the kid, and it had everything to do with the fact that she didn't like that my driveway was adorned with skulls on the posts at the gate, and that I had corpses hanging from trees, and my entire yard was decorated year-round like a graveyard, or whatever. I had upturned crosses in the backyard, and a lot of that, I was at Stone Street and 3rd Avenue, University Avenue. There used to be a terrible liquor store there. There used to be all kinds of crack and whores and gunfights and everything. So part of the strategy was not just that I liked this stuff, but because it also served as a great deterrent. I had a lot of fun thinking that I was into black magic and a Satanist because of all this crap. I forget the phrase I had on a sign, Requiem Elu, something, I can't remember, but it was "My will be done," was the gist of it, and it was on a coffin in front of 3 upturned crosses, and I think it was was it Paul? I forget which one. It was Peter.
It was hung upside down.
He was crucified upside down.
St. Peter.
Was it Peter? Because he wanted to exit the world the way he entered it.
What I've read is that
with his feet to the sky, so he could see the heavens as he was entering it. But it was also kind of a rejection of the Romans' practice of crucifying, because it was actually more common to crucify them upside down than upside right. I mean, there's even Roman coins that show the crucifixion upside down. Not Jesus' crucifixion, but the crucifixion upside down. So it's not a satanic symbol at all. In fact, it's a very biblical symbol. So I kind of put that up there as sort of my joke on the morons out there that would go, "Oh, it's just Anton LaVey's Satanism." No, not at all. It's actually direct reference to persecution of Christians and how it was done, and it was done upside down. But Peter embraced it. He wanted to exit the earth the way he came into it, with his head pointed down, like he was being born, with the clouds of heaven at his feet, as if he was entering.
I was always told the reason why he did that for is he didn't want to be crucified in the same manner as his Lord. So that's the reason why he asked to be hung upside down. Huh. But anyway, it's an exerted point, though, and I'd like to talk about that and continue that conversation next week. About the reforms and stuff like that, and about basically how can that be? Maybe we can brainstorm between then, and individually maybe come up with ideas of how we think could be better to reform it than simply defunding, which I think is going to be catastrophic.
Well, I mean, I didn't really think of that New Deal idea until just now when we were discussing this. But it's funny because all you folk out there that want to think that this is just like all crazy talk and these cops are not all that bad. Did anyone ever want to believe that Catholic priests were diddling kids? No. But what's been happening for the last 2-3 decades? Constant exposure of that truth. Now, what is it? The Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts. I mean, of all things, the Boy Scouts. But is that a surprise? No. It's even made fun of in, like, The Simpsons and Family Guy and a variety of other comical, references. So this idea that this corruption is not pandemic, is not part of the norm, people need to wake up to it.
Right.
It's everywhere. It's all the time.
Too Pollyannish.
It's It's like this like I was saying before, like, when was it like this 1950s idyllic idea? It never was.
No.
It never was. Wake up, reform. That's what we need more than anything else, which is going to require people to actually step up and participate in the system like I'm trying to do and very few other people are actually trying to do. I think what differentiates me is that I have never done a single act in politics, protest or otherwise, for attention, for money, or any other reason than I wanted to affect the paradigm. I wanted to get people to think about what's going on, see things from a different point of view, break out of their shell a little bit. I'm not some kind of superhero or anything, but that maybe I'm fortunate. I've always had the ability to see that. I've met and known people and friends that could relate, discuss, and debate those issues without being offended or falling on the other side of the line and wanting to kill you because of it, or whatever. So, anyway.
Okay, we'll wrap up today, and we'll continue this next week. And thank you for coming in, Adam.
Yeah, this is fun. I like doing this.
Have a good one.
Yep.